On this vast American land, everything still presents the purest sense of beauty. Amidst the winding mountain roads, a young couple is deeply engulfed in despair. Marty has already begun to regret following her husband Aaron to the western United States. The two have trekked for a whole year, but have yet to find their new home. Despite being filled with hope and dreams, on this day, Marty chose to give up. Even though the local man Ben informed them to head north, Marty stubbornly insisted that the direction must be northwest. This time, Aaron was unwilling to compromise. After all, this obstinate wife had brought along an entire load of books. Just as Marty was sinking into complaints and despair, the heavens revealed to the young couple a breathtaking scene of nature's grandeur. In that moment, they understood in their hearts that they had finally found their future home. Aaron constantly envisioned the future log cabin, a swing for the children, and a stream for his wife. On this land, family businesses can be passed down through generations, and their love will also endure forever. Aaron promised Marty that no matter how difficult life may be, they should not forget the vows they made to each other. However, the next morning, the horse unexpectedly went missing, and Aaron hurried off to chase after the unruly horse. Just as Aaron found the horse and was about to pursue it, he accidentally fell off while running fast. Even more terrifying, Aaron's head struck heavily against a rock, and he died on the spot, without a breath. When Marty prepared the breakfast pancakes, she began to worry about her husband who had not yet returned. The valley was vast and boundless, yet she could not hear Aaron's response. The stream flowed gently, and Marty had almost washed all her clothes when she suddenly faintly heard a call, barely audible, belonging to Aaron. What had happened? Where was her husband? As her thoughts turned, a figure in the distance made Marty ecstatic. But as that person gradually approached, Marty's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. The visitor was none other than the local guide Ben from a few days ago. Ben had discovered the unfortunate Aaron an hour ago. At that moment, all of Marty's hopes and dreams collapsed in an instant. She forced herself to endure the heart-wrenching pain and confirmed her husband's death. Completely overwhelmed by grief, she could only retreat to the wagon and weep alone in silence. Ben did not know how to express his condolences to the woman who had lost her beloved, so he could only promise to return the next day to handle Aaron's affairs. That night, an unprecedented fierce wind blew through the valley, as if it were Aaron's soft sobs or Marty's despairing emotions that were difficult to calm. When Marty awoke again, Ben's wife Sarah had come to her side. Nearby villagers had gathered, preparing to hold a funeral for Aaron. However, Marty could not face reality. She could only force herself to remain calm, using the stream to clear her mind. Amidst a crowd of unfamiliar strangers, she quietly buried the deepest love of her first half of life. Afterward, Sarah informed Marty of the harsh reality. Winter was approaching, and the caravan heading east would not depart until the following spring at the earliest. Therefore, Marty had to make a decision quickly to determine how to survive the winter. Lost and without support, Marty felt directionless and was filled with uncertainty about her future life. In the pouring rain, Marty's emotions were more chaotic than the downpour itself. At that moment, a stranger approached Marty. His name was Clark, a farmer from the nearby mountains. He came to seek Marty after hearing about her situation from Ben. He hoped that Marty would marry him, so she would have a place to stay during the winter, and his own daughter, Missy, could have a mother. Clark candidly admitted that he knew this all seemed absurd, and understood that this move was ill-timed. He was entirely doing it for his daughter, because she deserved to have a mother and to enjoy the nurturing of maternal love. If Marty wanted to return home, Clark would prepare the fare for her journey back in the following spring. At that moment, Marty was astonished to realize that perhaps all her difficulties could be resolved through this choice. A few days later, Clark's daughter Missy took action and taught Ben's son a lesson. The reason was quite simple. Everyone was discussing that Missy was about to have a new mother. This was a fact that Missy could not accept and did not want to accept. It was also on this day that Marty came to the hillside where Ben's family lived and saw Missy for the first time, the girl who could defeat the boy. Marty still could not convince herself to accept such an arrangement. Sarah comforted Marty, saying that her current situation did not allow her to indulge in sadness. With nothing to her name, her priority was to figure out how to survive the winter safely. Ultimately, in the presence of a priest, Marty and Clark held a little-known wedding. Missy outside the window witnessed it all. Marty almost exhausted all her strength to reluctantly say yes. On the way back, the three remained silent. Missy was particularly indifferent to this new family member. Clark's home was very small, so Marty could only share a room with Missy, while Clark lived alone in a small room outside. But none of this weighed on Marty's mind. Under the immense sorrow, she only felt an unbearable fatigue. That day, Marty almost slept until dusk. Under the moonlight, she seemed to see a photo of the former lady of the house. It wasn't until the father and daughter finished breakfast that Marty finally got up. Clark was quite awkward about the current embarrassing situation. Missy, on the other hand, was full of sarcasm, unable to understand how someone could sleep so much. In order for Marty to adapt to life, Clark took his daughter out to work. On that day, a hungry Marty tasted the farm's meals for the first time. This meal was also the most satisfying one she had had in days. However, her sorrow did not diminish in the slightest due to her full stomach. In that golden sunlight, this woman who had lost her beloved cried out in anguish. Fortunately, only the mountains knew, only the blue sky witnessed, and only the falling leaves accompanied Marty in her grief. Spending the whole day with tears on her face became Marty's norm in recent days. The father and daughter did not disturb this sorrowful person, as Clark firmly believed that time could heal all wounds. After several days, the neighing of horses made Marty wake up for the first time in the morning. Looking at her hard-working new husband, Marty finally gathered the courage to step out of the room for the first time during the family breakfast. This time, Missy once again provoked Marty, mocking her for having many flashy dresses and a pile of useless books. Fortunately, Clark had carefully organized all of Marty's luggage. Marty finally asked Clark what he hoped she would do for herself. Clark introduced his daughter Missy to Marty, and although Missy was still young, she was already able to help him with half of the farm work. Clark felt both comforted and heartbroken. He hoped his daughter could play and enjoy herself like other children, rather than repeating heavy farm work day after day like he did. Therefore, Clark hoped Marty would take on household duties as a mother, giving her daughter the maternal love she deserved, allowing her to have the joyful time of childhood. Marty asked what would happen if she left in the spring. Clark said everything would happen naturally. In the evening, Marty went to the chicken coop to look for Missy. Marty intended to help, but Missy outright refused. Eager Marty didn't even know how to find eggs. In addition, Marty taught Missy to spell words. However, just as Missy was unfamiliar with farm work, Marty also could not successfully feed the cows or milk them. Missy mocked Marty for being older yet having no skills. These words made Marty furious, and the pranks continued. Missy took advantage of Marty's unawareness and threw horse manure on her. Marty could no longer tolerate this mischievous girl. Marty stated that she knew Missy hated her, and she also disliked Missy and this desolate place. If it weren't for her prior agreement with Clark, she would never accept this family, nor would she accept this identity. Since she could endure a year of long journeys, bear the pain of losing her husband, and marry a man she didn't know, she could also endure Missy's various antics. That evening at dinner, even Clark could sense the tense atmosphere between his daughter and his new wife. Clark suggested to Marty that they attend a gathering soon to be held at Ben's farm. Missy, eager to provoke Marty, insisted that Marty accompany her. That night, Clark found Marty, who was about to go to bed, and due to the busy farming schedule the next day, he could only leave Missy at home. He worried that Marty wouldn't be able to take care of their daughter, but Marty insisted she was fully capable. However, when Marty woke up and searched around, she found a terrified Missy in the barn. It turned out that a skunk had entered the barn, and facing this beast that could release a foul odor, Marty tried to calm Missy while attempting to drive the skunk away. Unexpectedly, at that moment, the family dog rushed into the barn, startling the skunk, which then sprayed its stench all over Marty. Missy laughed at Marty's messy appearance while kindly using tomatoes to help her remove the odor. This time, Missy also realized that this new mother was not as incompetent as she had imagined. After nightfall, Marty hurriedly prepared dinner. Sure enough, the only thing she could cook, pancakes, got burnt. As soon as Clark stepped through the door, he found Marty with burns and quickly brought butter to gently soothe her pain. Clark reassured Marty that she was just unfamiliar with using the stove and would master it with a little practice. Watching the tender interaction between father and daughter, Marty secretly felt that she might indeed be clumsy. The conflict between the two was still unresolved. To embarrass Marty in public, Missy wouldn't allow her to accompany her father into town, and provocatively claimed that her fried chicken was far superior to Marty's burnt pancakes. At that moment, Marty's competitive spirit was ignited. She grabbed an axe and quickly caught the agile rooster, learning to pluck and cook fried chicken according to the book. When Clark and Missy returned, Missy even mistakenly thought that a wolf had entered the chicken coop. Despite the ground being covered in chicken feathers, Marty successfully made delicious fried chicken. Her stubborn nature and unwillingness to give up always allowed her to prove her abilities in difficult situations. To this day, Missy still doesn't understand why Marty has so many dresses. After all, no matter how many clothes there are, one can only wear one at a time. Missy only has one dress, which her mother sewed for her during her lifetime, meant solely for wearing on Sundays. Missy mentioned her mother to others for the first time. Her memories of her mother are quite vague. She only remembers her mother's beauty, recognized as the most beautiful woman in town. Missy also remembers that after her mother passed away, there was no longer any light in her father's eyes. Marty softly said that Missy must miss her mother very much. Missy did not respond, merely burrowing silently into her blankets. This gave Marty the chance to bathe alone for the first time. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Clark returned to the house to get something and inadvertently caught sight of Marty bathing, instantly panicking, not only accidentally burning himself, but also hurriedly stumbling and closing his eyes. This little incident made Marty begin to pay attention to this kind-hearted man. Marty noticed that every Sunday afternoon, Clark would go out alone. This made her very curious about where this new husband was going. As the autumn wind grew cooler, Marty intended to get some clothes to keep warm, but stumbled upon a side of Missy that was unknown to others. It turned out that Missy took out Marty's pink long dress and quietly spoke to her mother's portrait in her mother's room. Missy knew her mother's favorite color was pink and understood that everyone was reluctant to let her touch her mother's belongings. However, Missy missed her mother too much, longing for the mother who sewed clothes for her and loved her dearly. The child's sadness instantly filled Marty with compassion. Missy, caught in the act, was immediately filled with rage. No matter how Marty explained, Missy was unwilling to accept this outsider. Missy frankly expressed that she only hoped this moment was spring so that Marty could leave. This time, Marty did not get angry, because she understood that there was a child stubbornly guarding her memories and a father enduring deeper sorrow because of it. Marty finally realized the weight of her responsibility. Filled with sadness and despair, she once thought of leaving, believing that the mother Missy needed was not her, not a woman who could barely learn to be a seamstress and teach English. However, Clark firmly believed that Marty was the most suitable choice. He knew that Marty could do it, that she could reach into his daughter's heart. He also believed that his daughter Missy would start a new life and find new meaning in life because of this new mother. Marty asked Clark how he was so certain. Clark replied that this was exactly what he prayed for day and night. After this incident, Missy reevaluated her pink long dress and decided to make a heartfelt act of kindness. That night, Marty hardly slept at all, but with her love, she won Missy's recognition for the first time. Days later, Clark finally saw a completely different daughter. It was the pink long dress modified by Marty, and his daughter's beauty amazed him for the first time. On that day, all the children found it hard to believe that Missy could be so radiant and charming. And it was on this day that Clark noticed something unusual about Marty. It turned out that Marty was already pregnant. Marty asked Clark how he noticed. Clark replied that when his wife was pregnant with Missy, she looked just like this. Marty wanted to clarify that this would not change the agreement between the two of them. But Clark did not care, instead believing that the arrival of new life was the best comfort for the departed loved ones. When Marty was already proficient at using the stove, Missy still had a resistance to reading. Marty encouraged Missy that she might not like reading, but books are the most meaningful journey in the world. In books, one can transform into all living things and experience the most exciting adventures. Marty's words sparked an interest in reading for Missy for the first time. At this moment, Marty was even more curious about Clark. She was very eager to know what this man did every Sunday afternoon. On an empty, rocky hillside, a lonely man was accompanied by a loyal hunting dog. Marty intended to tease him, but she heard Clark softly singing words that were both a prayer to the heavens and a longing for his deceased wife. His deep voice expressed endless yearning, and the howling mountain wind could not disperse his profound affection. In that instant, Marty's heartstrings were suddenly touched, because a shared emotion resonated within her heart. Just as she was about to leave, a familiar figure of a horse appeared on the distant hillside. However, a heavy snowfall came, and Clark hurried back home, only to find that Marty was missing. He knew well that the heavy snow made the outdoors extremely dangerous, and he instructed his daughter that if he did not return within 10 minutes, she should stand at the door and keep shooting to signal. In a moment, the snowstorm swept in like a fierce beast, instantly covering the familiar farm in a blanket of white. By instinct, Clark struggled to find the frozen and unconscious Marty beside the horse. Clark picked up Marty and rushed home. However, the return journey was far more difficult than the way there. In the heavy snow, Clark could hardly open his eyes and could not discern the direction. Fortunately, Missy's gunfire rang out just in time. Clark immediately moved toward the sound of the gunfire. Unexpectedly, the bullets had already run out. Worried that her father would lose his way, Missy took out a metal basin and kept banging it. Finally, in a critical moment, she guided her father back home. That night, Clark stayed close to protect the mother and daughter. Missy was also very worried about the safety of Marty and the unborn child. Clark kept vigil by Marty's side all night. Marty felt deeply saddened by Aaron's death while chasing the horse. Clark comforted her, saying that this was a choice every man would make. In the icy cold, accompanied by the sound of a gunshot, Clark hunted delicious game for his family. As Christmas approached, Missy kept talking about the holiday. She was very curious about how Marty, as a town woman, would spend Christmas. Why would someone specifically buy a Christmas tree? And why would someone buy gifts instead of making them by hand? During their conversation, Marty candidly admitted that she had long been alone, with both parents deceased and her husband gone. Even if she wanted to return home, there were no relatives to seek. Clark hurriedly stopped his daughter from continuing to ask questions and told everyone that as long as family is together, any place is the most beautiful Christmas. On that day, Missy was filled with joy as her father cut down a carefully selected Christmas tree for her. Clark personally prepared gifts for the two women, and the two women also quietly prepared surprises by hand. On Christmas morning, Clark presented his daughter with a handmade wooden house gift and prepared a cradle he crafted for the soon-to-be-born child. Watching Clark read to his daughter, Marty was lost in thought. Perhaps this was the home she had always dreamed of. Perhaps he was the refuge she could rely on. When Marty's abdomen could steadily hold the scissors, Missy asked the question all children are curious about. Where do babies come from? Marty vaguely told Missy that when one person loves another and the other loves them back, love overflows and gives birth to new life. Missy suddenly thought of Ben's family, which had 4 or 5 children, and surely it was filled with endless love. Missy hoped her father could find someone to love again. Marty let Missy feel the movements of the new life. The new life quietly arrived during the cold days. Marty gave birth at home, unable to contact the outside world due to heavy snow, so Clark had to personally assist Marty with the delivery with his daughter's help. This nearly drove Marty to despair. Having a man assist with the delivery was simply unimaginable. But under the intense pain, Marty had no choice. On that day, Missy stood outside the door, constantly listening to Marty's painful moans and her father's gentle reassurances. Finally, in the stillness of the night, a cry broke the silence. A baby boy was born safely, and Marty named him Aaron in memory of her beloved late husband. On this day, the valley welcomed its fourth family member. The ice and snow melted, and the spring breeze quietly arrived. Marty could finally take the baby out for some fresh air. At this time, Ben brought his family to visit. During the visit, Ben's wife Sarah couldn't help but sigh that today's Marty was like a different person from the past. Sarah noticed that when Marty looked at her son, she must miss her late husband. This is human nature, and no one can change it. Sarah shared her own past. It turned out that Sarah and Ben were not the original couple. Years ago, after losing her husband and with 2 children, she met Ben, who had also lost his wife and was raising a child. Many people thought this union was just for survival, but only Sarah knew that she truly loved her current husband. Because many times, love is not a sudden burst of passion, but rather a slow accumulation like flowing water, naturally leading to fruition. Perhaps moved by Sarah's story, that day, Marty finally joked and teased with Clark, who was working. In the midst of their playful banter, both of them simultaneously felt the urge to kiss each other. Unexpectedly, a baby's cry interrupted this warmth, but it clarified their feelings for one another. Little did they know, on that very day, a fire broke out in the barn. Marty, who had never prayed before, for the first time prayed for Clark's safety. This time, Clark was unharmed, but the losses were devastating. Not only were all the crops reduced to ashes, but Marty also lost his horses and all his belongings. Clark kept his promise and prepared to send Marty away in the spring. At that moment, however, Marty instinctively hesitated to mention the long-anticipated farewell. Looking at Clark, who seemed unfazed by the destruction of the barn, Marty voiced her doubts. How could Clark be so sure that heaven would respond to his prayers? When he lost his wife and barn, and his daughter was engulfed in pain, who had ever heard his prayers? Without hesitation, Clark took Marty to the hill they once stood on. He told Marty that even if he did everything to protect his daughter, she would still face unexpected hardships. All he could do was to guard and help her through her trials, just as heaven had always been by his side. Thus, the essence of divine love is not to prevent disasters from occurring, but to remain steadfast when they do. Clark, through his own beliefs, unraveled the deepest knots in Marty's heart. Perhaps it was this openness to life that made Marty reassess the land, herself, and her desire to continue living. In the end, she made a firm decision to choose a new path for the rest of her life. She left her love behind, expressed her longing to be held back in a letter to Clark. However, fate played a trick. Missy accidentally dropped Marty's letter while retrieving her father's old clothes. Despite Marty's constant hope for Clark's response, Clark continued preparing for her departure as usual. Under the setting sun, Clark knelt on one knee and informed his daughter about Marty's impending departure. Missy, who had already accepted Marty, could not bear this reality. But the day of parting eventually arrived. Before leaving, Marty placed the necklace her mother had given her around Missy's neck. Marty reminded Missy that even if she left this place, her love would always be with her. Yet, facing Clark, Marty had 1,000 words stuck in her throat, ultimately transforming into just one. It was nice to meet Clark. She buried all her feelings deep inside. The house remained the same, but it lacked that special lady of the house. Only when he returned to his room did Clark finally break down in tears, regretting his own cowardice. Why had he brought Marty into his life only to let her leave? As he looked back, Clark discovered the letter that had fallen to the ground. At that moment, Clark finally understood Marty's feelings. He galloped forward, pursuing his beloved. As other travelers complained about the barren land, Marty instinctively spoke up to correct them. Amid the rumbling of wheels, voices calling for Marty grew closer. Clark finally caught up with the caravan and kissed the woman he loved. Marty asked Clark why he had come to find her at that moment. 1,000 words surged in Clark's heart, but ultimately only one came out. "I love you." Clark pleaded with Marty to return home with him, not to leave, and to stay with him and Missy. Under the sunset of that day, Missy welcomed back the person she did not want to leave. This person was also the one her father loved dearly. And this person was the name Missy longed to call out: Mother.